Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Organizing to Victory podcast, where we're talking garage politics. My name's Lee Perry, and on today's episode, we have Marialana Kinter, someone who served in the United States Navy as a nuclear reactor supervisor and is now fighting for veterans running for Congressional District 7 here in Florida against Cory Mills. This district is an extremely winnable district, especially if you're a Democrat with a strong message against a lot of the hateful rhetoric that's coming out of the Cory Mills and Trump administration. And Marialana dives into some of the things that she's fighting for, not just the things she's fighting against. And so here's my interview with Marialana. Very special guest in the house today, not only someone who's super cool, super progressive, and running a million miles a minute, but someone who's my brand new boss, Marialana Kinter.
Howdy. Thank you for having me on today.
So I'm super excited, not only because I already have fallen in love with your platform and with the way that you're doing deep organizing, but you have like a really powerful story that, you're too busy talking about the issues that it's hard to really crack in and learn about who you are and your personal why. So that's why we're here today. But we are going to talk a little bit about the policies too. So first, let's hear about you and where you're from.
I'm Marialana Kinter. I was originally born in Bozeman, Montana, and we grew up moving around pretty often from Bozeman, Montana to Cleveland, Ohio, Charlotte, North Carolina. Before settling permanently in Charlotte, North Carolina, we triangulated between the three of them for a long time. And from elementary school to high school, I was in Charlotte.
Oh, cool. Charlotte's beautiful and the weather is gorgeous.
I love Charlotte. I think it is one of the most perfect locations because you have the mountains 2 hours away and the beach 3 hours away.
Yeah. And you seem to be kind of like a hiker, you like to go camping.
I love to go camping. It's actually why I went into nuclear powers, because of my love for the outdoors. And I absolutely love it. I would consider myself an avid outdoorsman.
You're going to have to draw a through line there for me on that one, because I don't know how they correlate.
A lot of engineering, a lot of science, technology, engineering that I was interested in. I wanted to do something that I didn't feel like I was selling my soul or selling out the planet in order to pursue a technical job. And so when I was weighing out the options, nuclear power is a form of clean energy, carbon-free energy production. And it was a way for me to pursue that while also honoring the planet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is really hard as an environmentalist. You're kind of told, actually, you're laughed at. I'm an environmental science major, and I was literally laughed at because people were like, what are you going to do for work?
Yes.
Yes. And it's like, oh, great. I guess nothing. But there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of opportunities. I don't get paid for this, but if you want to give me money, you can. There's a lot of opportunities if you want to go into the environmental world and the renewable energy world. And, we'll talk about different policies of bringing more renewable energy focused jobs into our country. But I'd love to hear a little bit more about you and like your background and how you got to be one of the youngest people running in this congressional district ever.
I have a long history. My background is much longer, I feel like, than the average person. Growing up, my father passed away when I was 5. We spent time in the foster care system. My mom was able to regain custody, and that shaped my political viewpoint. Being in a program that is supposed to serve some of the most vulnerable people, children who need help, and seeing how that program, along with a lot of our federal programs, strong arm those who are the most vulnerable, take advantage of them, and create almost a cycle in order that people have a very hard time escaping, a cycle that keeps the working class down, a cycle that keeps people in these same programs the government's trying to save a nickel here and spending $20 down the road with these. And growing up, being a part of that, relying on Medicaid, relying on free school lunches, relying on public education to provide for us, really, really shaped my viewpoint of everything.
I mean, because kids are supposed to not even know that they're experiencing struggles, but it's almost impossible to do that when you're, having to get free lunch and your friends have a fancier lunch, or you're noticing that you're not getting new clothes as often as some of your friends, or you're realizing that you're seeing tension in the household over things like paying for your bills. I mean, all of those things really impact a child at a very young age. And I think that governmental safety nets are an essential way for a kid to be able to retain their childhood. But the more that those things are gutted, the more stress and pain is inflicted on a child. What were some of the ways that you felt that stress from your mom struggling, and how exactly did it impact the way that you look at the world?
A big way that it affected the way that I look at the world was I saw how these programs that people think are community members mooching off the government or being supported by the government, or the accusations that people who utilize food stamps, people who utilized Medicaid, government health care, or even government assisted housing are using a cheat code for life, that they're getting ahead of everybody else because they need that support. When I can say firsthand as a child and being in the situation where we needed it and talking to my peers and talking to my friends and not understanding that we were receiving help because it felt like we were constantly behind. And that's something that I pushed down and we harbored and we pretended to be on the same page of everyone. Those programs didn't set us apart. Those programs didn't advance us beyond the normal average family. It gave us an equal starting point. A big example that I actually talk about a lot is when I was in school, we needed the school supplies that the school offered, whether it was the free book that we were reading in class. And in high school, they changed in North Carolina from the normal curriculum to what's called Common Core. And it changed all the books that we were reading. And so one book that we were reading was very new into the curriculum. The school didn't have it yet. The school didn't have it, and I couldn't find it at the library or I couldn't rip it offline. I didn't have the book. And so I just went through the quarter without having the book. I had just moved in with my aunt and uncles at this point. My mom got very sick and moved down to Savannah to receive treatment. And I was too embarrassed to say that I didn't have the book to my aunt and uncle, which in retrospect, very silly. I should have told my family members. They were taking care of me. And I got an F in the first quarter. And my aunt and uncle saw the grade, asked me why I refused to say. I was so embarrassed that I couldn't afford this $7 book. And they went to my teacher and they talked and discovered why and provided me the book. And my teacher let me make up all the work. But even just the cutting of that baseline program, for me as a child, I fell so far behind. I no longer had any equal starting point because of a situation I couldn't help. That's why immediately, as early as I could at 14, I got my first job. I worked 2 jobs in high school, over 40 hours a week, joined the Navy at 17 because it completely shaped every bit of the human that I had been up to that point.
Mm-hmm. It's so interesting to hear your story, and I want to dive into it more because you're running for Congress. And I just look at our congressional makeup now and I'm like, how many people in office right now have a story that's even close?
I cannot stand when politicians or candidates come here and they say, what's your issue? What's your family struggling? Because I can tell you, we are probably struggling with the same thing my family's struggling with. And I never have to say those folks back home's issue because there are issues. And that's the problem. The makeup of Congress don't have the same issues as us. They don't think of the grocery prices or gas or any of that because they don't have to. We just saw with the Speaker of the House saying $200,000 isn't enough to live on. We have to let them dabble in insider trading, which is illegal for everybody else. We have to let them compensate because their public service isn't a privilege, it's a burden. They can't afford it because they aren't like us.
Interesting. So how did you get to Florida?
My husband is actually from Florida, and we had been out stationed together in Charleston, South Carolina, in upstate New York, in Washington State. And then I was in Long Island. He got out of the military. We were choosing where we wanted to live, anywhere in the nation. And we narrowed it down to Florida because he is a lover of Florida. And up until this point, I didn't know much about it. And I researched more and more as we were getting ready to determine where we wanted to put down our forever roots. I fell in love with Florida. My husband wanted to go to school out here for aerospace engineering. He wanted to work at NASA. I absolutely just love the ecosystem out here, the environment out here, the possibilities of every endless outdoor stuff all year round. I liked the mindset growing up in the South in North Carolina. I really liked the community mindset. Growing up with a big family, I love the community mindset. And Florida offered all of that. Mm-hmm. It offers a unique sense of community, a amazing sense of outdoorsmanship. And the future here is just where we want to raise our family.
Yeah. Well, I skipped over the part of you joining the military. I mean, what made you do that?
When I was young in school, I was 16 my senior year of high school, And I was in AP classes. I was in science. I was the president of some honor societies. I really, really tried in school because I figured my chance to financial freedom, my path to independence would come through strong academic standing. My mom graduated high school. I don't know if my dad graduated high school. They didn't seek out higher education. To me, those two things correlated. Mm-hmm. A successful professional career, a successful career in science, technology, engineering, or math, which were my passions, what I was interested in, would unlock breaking that generational cycle that felt like was inescapable at the time. I didn't know how to apply to college because I didn't have that example. My grandfather had gone to college. He was the closest person I knew who had gone to college, but he went in the 60s. I didn't have an example of a woman in STEM where I wanted to be. And I was in NJROTC in high school, and my mentor, my father figure, he really shaped everything in my high school career. When I had no parental figure, when I had instability in my home life, he was there. He was who I looked up to. He's who I modeled my behavior after. And seeing what the military had provided for him, and then learning about the nuclear program, which is what I envisioned, a job that contributed to science or engineering in some way. I saw those two paths correlating. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I didn't even apply to college. Went up to my recruiter. I was still 16. I said, I want to do the nuclear program. He said, yeah, everyone wants to do the nuclear program. It's the hardest one to get into. Also, you're too young. Please don't ever talk to me until you're 17. Came back on my 17th birthday. I said, I want to do the nuclear program. And he said, yeah, everyone wants to do it. It's really hard. We'll see. I was like, tell me what I need to do. I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And
shipped out to boot camp as a nuclear mechanic 10 days after I graduated high school.
And what was boot camp like? Especially as a woman.
Well, boot camp actually was not that bad. A lot of people try to compete. It's big in the military to compete with who has the worst story. I don't have the worst military story. I don't have the worst boot camp story. Since I did ROTC in high school, I went to a triple threat division, which is people who were in marching band, not me, I don't have rhythm, people who can hold a flag, I can hold a flag, and people who spin rifles, which I did in high school. And so I went to that, and it's essentially boot camp, but that's band camp also. So it was a much easier version. Twice a week for 8 hours, we go and practice spinning rifles while people play instruments, where everyone else gets what we call beat or working out constantly. So we had an easier version in that sense. I was also in charge of the boot camp division, even though I was the youngest person. It's called an RPOC, I think, recruit chief petty officer. You're in charge of your boot camp division. And I got placed in charge in the very beginning of boot camp in P days and kept it the whole time, which isn't common, but my RDCs, the people who were in charge, said they didn't want to train somebody else. So I was in charge the entire time. I had a very non-traditional boot camp experience. The person who was the assistant person in charge was the oldest person in the division. So we had a good juxtaposition going on.
Cool. Well, I mean, it's so scary, like, to think of a young woman going into the military and, you know, all the things that you hear about women being exposed to violence and things like that, to be brave enough to jump right in head first and to just stay on task and stay on route. Like, that's very inspirational. Did you find yourself ever having any emotional, like, crises, missing home, or was it always just the ambition of going into the military and seeing something new and having a new family?
I have always had a very high belief, and this is weird, I never get to talk about this in politics. From a very young age, I had a very, very strong belief that hard work would allow you to accomplish anything. Mm-hmm. I know at times that can seem very starry-eyed and naive, but I was 17. I grew up believing that if you worked hard enough, no matter what, even if you failed, you could try again and you could do it no matter what. And at 17, that really did, as naive as it is, because now I recognize that is not always the case. Systems in place, no matter how hard you work, you will not move on to the next tier of whatever you want. But at that time, and I would say even now, I still believe in that for the most part. It really aided me. I would be lying if I said I didn't have one specific moment in boot camp where I just woke up under a red light, because at night they keep the lights on, but they're red because it doesn't keep you up, but you can still see. And it was P days, meaning you're not in the permanent area that you're going to be. It was cold. We didn't get any of our clothes yet. They keep you up for like 36 hours to get everyone, because they have people coming in from all different time zones. They want to get you on the same sleep schedule because you're all in Chicago now. You have people coming from the Philippines, people coming from Hawaii, so you're awake. When they finally let us go to sleep, I woke up in the middle of the night. The person next to me jumped out of their bed sleepwalking, and not allowed. I was just like, I don't know what to do. I stared at the red light and thought, I could be in college right now. What the hell am I doing? And I said, well, I'm not in college right now. I'm here. Let's keep going. This is going to be our first rodeo, but we're going to do it. And went back to bed. That was it.
Well, that's really inspirational. And then how did you end up meeting your husband and kind of getting to that next step in life?
You remember that part about hardworking?
Yeah.
Well, the nuclear school really put that into practice. It was a culture shock, because you go from public education, which, looking back on it from after nuclear school, is relatively slow paced. You have a year that you're learning stuff. Even if you're in a quarter, you have 3 months. We had a test every week, brand new information. You're learning essentially the complete curriculum of nuclear engineering shrunk down into 6 months, and then another 6 months of hand-on operations and practice. And it was very quick paced. I was doing things I'd never done before. I didn't come from a mechanical background. My jobs were lifeguarding, CPR, and I worked in a bakery. My uncle had taught me things like changing the oil in your car and that sort of stuff. But we were talking heavy machinery operations, how nuclear reactors start up, shut down, how your operations affect reactor power. And it was completely new. My husband, we were friends first. He tutored me through it. So they have group study. I was putting in 50 hours a week on top of our regular classroom time of 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then I would stay there till midnight studying. And then I would come in all weekend to try to catch up, because of that belief that hard work would aid you. And it really did. I would say hard work shaped my entire Navy career in what I was willing to put into it. He tutored me. He stayed after with me. He was on voluntary hours. My husband did very good in every schooling, smartest guy I know. And he just stayed after me. And that time spent together, I developed a crush on him. And we then were roommates in New York with 4 other people. And I ended up telling him I liked him, and the rest was history. But we had known each other for a year and a half at that point.
I mean, by that point, you guys are like literally closer than family to an extent, because you're literally spending every waking moment, yes, it feels like, together.
We would be at home together with all of our many, many roommates. And then we'd go to our shift work for 12 hours together. And then we'd come back and everyone would meal prep together. But yeah, basically, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, marriage is like even easier than that at this point.
Well, our first year of marriage, I was only home for 13 days.
Oh, really?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So how does that work? You had to travel?
We deployed. So my husband and I did not do the typical military thing where you meet, you get married, and then you get divorced a week later. We were friends. We dated for 2 years, and then we got engaged, and we were planning on being engaged for a year plus. But the Navy, COVID just started. It wasn't called COVID at the time. It was mystery illness. We didn't know what it was called. It was still numbers. People were getting sick. Healthy 26-year-olds, 25-year-olds, 22-year-olds were dying, and no other ship was operational. And so they said, you're going out to sea. We don't know how long. We're moving up the deployment 6 months. You have 1 week notice. Pack all of your things. My husband was pending getting out of the military, which leaves you without health care, all of these things during an unknown time when people around us were getting very sick. So I didn't want him to not have health care. We were already planning on getting married. Called my family, told them we were going to move up the wedding to now. We were in Washington. Both of our families were
a week notice.
Yes. We went to the courthouse. The courthouse said, we're shutting down tomorrow. If you don't bring back this paper today, you aren't getting married. And so we dated it for 3 days. That's what they told us to do. And we got home. Our roommates got registered really quick to officiate. We officiated right there in our kitchen, invited our friends over to be witnesses, dropped it off at the courthouse, and then I went on deployment, came back a year later. They kept shifting it. We kept getting extended. It was supposed to be 6 months. You'll be home for Halloween. You'll be home for Thanksgiving. You'll be home for Christmas, New Year's, Mother's Day. And then we got home 342 days later.
So were they doing that because of COVID, or what was the reason why they rush deployed you and then kept you out?
The ship that was out at the time, the goal of the Navy in general as practice is to have an aircraft carrier in the Middle East at every time, because the Middle East historically has been our point of greatest instability, insecurity, national risk. And the aircraft carrier that was out at the time got sick. They had to pull into Guam. Because no one was following COVID restrictions, because there weren't COVID restrictions. It was just that random sickness. And it was March of 2020. And we had gone down to duty section only because they didn't know what was spreading this illness. They didn't know what was causing it. We got informed that all the other ships were getting ported because the aircraft carrier at the time had a lot of people who were sick. They had a chief in E7 who got hospitalized in Guam and passed away.
Oh my God.
They couldn't go anywhere. They had to come back and sequester and go into isolation. We were operational because the Nimitz is the only carrier in Washington. It's already isolated. They had already put us on duty section only, meaning not everyone's working at the same time. Only 1 in every 3 people is working for 24 hours in your home the other days. So they had taken early precautions. We stayed healthy. Then we sequestered on board for 30 days. When we went out, they were going to send us back home whenever another aircraft carrier could come out. But people kept getting sick. They weren't honoring their COVID precautions, or shipyard workers would bring it on, any number of things. Your family member, you get sick, now you're out of work, or you bring it to the ship and everyone's sick. So because we were already out, we were already with the same people, we weren't going to get sick. They weren't flying things on and off the ship. We were barely flying food on and off the ship. And they were like, you're already healthy. Anytime anyone came down with a cold or anything, they were sent to the O10 level, which is basically like 20 stories up, isolated and berthing, dropped off meal sacks. And since no other ship could come out and replace us, we had to stay out until someone could.
Wow. So you get home and then what?
We got home and we got pho. That was the first thing we did. He picked me up. Even getting off the ship, it was still during COVID. We got our COVID tests. We were the first ones to get COVID tests. We were the first ones to get COVID shots. And when we got back, COVID was still going on. And walking off the ship, we had to walk 6 feet apart. We had to do it on waves. Usually when you get home from a deployment, there's a big parade, a celebration. They're waving banners. We got to walk out on Washington's overcast, gloomy days, 6 feet apart alphabetically. You had to walk to the designated place, no stopping along the way. They had master at arms police with guns, making sure no one stopped. Went to my husband's car. He took me off base, got me pho soup, and then we went home to the house he had purchased while we were gone. So I came home to a completely new house, no furniture, and we got a dog, and we moved on with our lives.
Priorities. Pho, dog, then furniture.
That's absolutely it. But we just moved on with our lives. There wasn't much to do about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a wild story. I wonder, how that informed your idea of running for Congress at this moment, and what politically shook you to make the jump.
I was very politically active at the time within the capacity I could be, but Congress wasn't even on my mind at this point. Running for Congress was not on my mind. That came much later. The extent that I was involved in politics at the time, being deployed, we had unreliable internet. We had unreliable news. We had only the TV shows that they showed you on the ship. What was brought in from satellite, everyone had the same 3 channels. And during that time, it was Black Lives Matter. It was watching a commanding officer get displaced for speaking up for his sailors, getting removed from, that happened while I was on deployment. I had a security clearance. You can't participate. My husband had a security clearance. You can't participate in certain political activities with that, or it's considered a security risk and you can get removed from your job. So I couldn't be vocal. I couldn't really participate the entire time I was in the military in politics in the way that I would have liked to. So it was extended to basically my inner circle, expressing my opinions, talking on the ship about it. We watched, like I said, Black Lives Matter. We watched January 6th insurrection. We watched the original Russia attacking Ukraine, all while either deployed or underway. And it heavily, heavily shaped how Sorry to get so serious and heavy topic, but
We're either crying on this podcast or we're getting like really, really, really serious.
I would say the Ukraine ones, because the first attack that we had watched on the ship was them attacking a nuclear power plant. I remember walking into this office that the PA's office, nukes will understand what I'm talking about. It's this office that only really has O4s and above. And I had to go in there. It was all the department heads for reactor. I had to go in there because I was a quality assurance planner. I was the only one for the mechanical division to go get a schematic and procedure approved. And it was dead silent. You could hear a pin drop. And you walked in and you were hit by this wall of just serious emotion. You knew immediately not to say anything. And on the TV, everyone was facing it, was Russia bombing a nuclear site. And everyone was waiting to see if there was going to be a nuclear meltdown. And we were out to sea. And then also watching the January 6th insurrections during one of the ship's lowest morale points. We had been deployed since April. It was January, 10 months in. And we were being told constantly, people's families were dying back home from COVID. People were getting divorced because their wives were like, both my parents died. Our kid is sick. You're not here. Due to no power of their own. And it was the lowest point of morale. Christmas had just passed. We got off nights and everyone sat there and watched as men in masks and men in hats with horns on them broke into the Capitol and essentially committed a terrorist attack. Mm-hmm. And we were all left wondering why we were out here. Whose democracy were we defending? The rights of American citizens to storm the Capitol, to put Capitol Police into a coma? And that was one of the lowest points I've ever experienced, was the feeling on the ship. Or the time over Christmas when the chaplain came on and said, "My God is a God of war," as we did combat operations off the coast of Somalia around Christmas.
The thing is that, you know, as an activist, for me, I have made a conscious decision to be absolutist in my approach and how I communicate things. And I never realized until recently how much of a lifesaver that is for me from like an emotional standpoint. If I had to, because of my security clearance, be silent on issues that I was very passionate about, I think I would probably implode and kind of go insane, because it fuels you to be able to advocate for things and post your opinion about things. And sometimes people post a little too much, but it is a mutually beneficial thing where if you're an activist and you're advocating for something, it can reaffirm your values within you and make you feel more confident as a person. And here you are, completely isolated, have a ton of questions as to when you're going to get home and, you know, what's waiting for you at home. Is there some bad news maybe you haven't even heard of yet that's happened to your friends or family? Like, you're just in this ambiguous place and you're limited to what you can say. So I'm assuming that injected a little bit of a fight once you were able to communicate some concerns.
I was very lucky in who I worked with and for on my ship. I would consider everyone I worked for very close friends. We were trusted. I was in a leadership position. I focused a lot of my energy, especially after the commanding officer got displaced, for what they perceived to be unnecessary political combativeness when he was advocating for his sailors and the fact that he didn't want them to get sick. I was able to, one, talk with my leadership, talk with my coworkers, talk with my chain of command, and focus my energy on advocating for those who I worked with and those who worked with me. And I understood that there were things I was not going to be able to participate or say or talk about. And honestly, on deployment, didn't have the mental bandwidth too. You're working 24/7, doing all these things to meet the mission. And so you're really focused on what's going on the ship. Everyone on the ship didn't have a say. What we were doing, not to say they didn't have a say, but what we were doing, what their day-to-day operations didn't extend beyond their immediate role. So when I was operating or when I was supervising the reactor plant, what we were doing back home didn't impact any political reason we were out there never reached me. I was in an engine room supervising a team to keep reactor power consistent. the political reasons on why and how didn't affect us. We weren't told them. They weren't even a thought to us. The immediate thought were keep reactor power up, operate. We weren't making shots on when to have combative flight operations.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something that a lot of people forget is everyone's trying to do their job to the best of their ability. And my time there was spent advocating for the people who worked for me. The people who I worked for advocated for me. I was very lucky in who my chain of command was
Mm-hmm.
and who I worked with.
Mm-hmm.
We could also have conversations of, what's your opinion of this? How do you feel about this? And it wasn't argumentative. It wasn't what you see on threads. It was just regular conversations. And regardless of political party, because we weren't there for politics, we were there for operating reactor power. And it allowed us to be constructive in our conversations about politics.
And then when you get home, something obviously must have lit your fire to get you to want to be political.
As soon as I could be publicly politically active, I was, because it festers you. When you see injustice, when you see children who are having the programs that allowed me to survive yanked from them,
Mm-hmm.
and see people saying they don't deserve it, it's welfare, it's this and it's that, and knowing that that's just a child who was born into this and is trying to reach adulthood. They're not trying to cheat the system. They're trying to go to school and get an education and not be so hungry they're distracted. It really does fester you when you can't have an opinion on it or a say or public demonstration on it. And then I went into an immediately public-facing role in Long Island and New York City as a recruiter/nuclear representative. I acted as a nuclear liaison for the Navy's nuclear program. I couldn't have a political say at all. If there was political things going on, you were told to stay clear of it. It was a risk because your whole job was to be a public face of the Navy's nuclear program.
Mm-hmm.
What if a parent saw you at a demonstration? What if someone recorded your opinion and now they're using that against the Navy? I'm not a PAO. I'm not allowed to make official statements, but since I'm in a public role, it completely took it off the table. And I would just talk to my husband constantly. When I can have a voice, when I can do things, I will.
Mm-hmm.
And I was out there in Long Island and my mom got very sick and passed away.
Mm.
And anyone who's lost their parent knows you're never too young or you're never too old to feel all of the emotions. And when I was going through this grief and reflecting period and thinking of how my mom shaped my life, all the sacrifices she made for us, I was also talking to hundreds of people, if not thousands of people a week in the most populous area in the nation, and seeing the same issues reflected back from my childhood. Why were they talking to me? What were they trying to get out of the Navy? What were they trying to get out of the nuclear program? What were they chasing? What were they seeking? Oftentimes stability. Oftentimes all of the things that happened when I was a kid were worse than ever 15 years later.
Mm-hmm.
And I told my husband, my leadership, my chain of command, that when I got out of the military, I would leave nuclear power behind and pursue some sort of politics. I figured local. My husband already lived in Florida at the time. I was coming down here all the time. We knew we were going to live here. And thought about water and soil supervisor. How can I get involved? I'm just going to go down there, get my education, and be involved in politics. I got down here, got a job at the University of Central Florida in a research lab while I got my education. It was a program that only hired veterans who had worked in nuclear power. And then DOGE happened and I was cut because the federal funding for the program I was in was cut because I am a woman, I'm a veteran, and it's a science program. All three of those classify as DEI. And although they didn't give the exact reason why the program was cut, it was cut during the DEI sweeps. And so I got a notice on like thousands of people who just got a letter in the mail. So I'm very fortunate for that. My boss called me one day on my way to work, said, "How you doing?" I said, "I'm doing good." He said, "Not anymore. We got DOGed." It was an all veterans program. So we had the freedom to talk more upfront to each other. And I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, you have 2 more weeks, but then we don't have funding." I said, "Why?" And he said, "I'm not sure. It's during the DEI stuff. That's probably it." And he was fantastic. The company was fantastic. I have nothing bad about them. They were awesome. I really liked working for them. But I was cut due to DOGE, and that pushed me over the edge. Nothing was going to change until we actually stepped up to do it. And the people who are in power now clearly were off the rocker.
Was it that made you think, okay, put aside soil and water, Congress?
It was being doged, and the national public outcry of the thousands of people losing their jobs, the sweeping cuts to Veterans Affairs and veterans foreclosure programs, and the across-the-board unanimous support from over half of Congress, despite their own constituents, despite their own people being fired, being laid off, losing income for their entire family, losing their homes. And watching that compounded with, I was in a fortunate position. My husband had a job. We were comfortable. We lived with my entire family. So we had a stable home life. But watching thousands of people experience just catastrophic wreckage in their personal life from losing their job unconstitutionally and illegally, and all of Congress being like, everyone loves it. We love this. This is great.
Yeah.
Pushed me over the edge, especially with Cory Mills, the person I'm challenging, being one of those people who's like, yeah, go. This is great. Let's keep doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's do it to more people.
Yeah, Cory Mills, the same guy who right now Nancy Mace is trying to get removed from some of his responsibilities because he has like stolen valor.
His
stories.
Own party.
His own party is coming after him. So you wake up one day and you're like, I'm running for Congress. Your husband looks at you and says,
okay. My husband is very supportive. He knows that from, again, having known me since I was 17 and seeing the type of work that I'll put into something, knowing that if this is what was going to happen, I was going to dive headfirst into it completely and do it in a way that I believe is a sustainable path forward.
Yeah.
So David's awesome.
A shout out to David. We'll have him on the podcast, especially after the election. We'll have margaritas and we'll just gossip. But I'm curious about, Cory Mills in particular. He's going to have a ton of resources put behind him. And even if he were to be removed, the Republicans in the state of Florida are even a unique brand of Republican because
I wouldn't be so certain because he did not even come close to the average Republican raising in both of the last quarters. Mm-hmm. We finished as a grassroots campaign the last quarter with more cash on hand than him. So I think this divide in his party and this controversy he keeps placing himself into is meaning he will not have those resources available.
Well,
he has Trump's endorsement.
I mean, exactly. I mean it from the standpoint of before you even file, the David and Goliath, what you're up against feeling must be, oh my goodness, this guy is Trump-backed. Yes. I mean, look what's happening to Trump-backed candidates all across the country. They're getting this like unconditional support, even if they have very long-standing criminal records.
I understand, yes. 100%. When I decided I would run, it felt as though I was going to be trying to push an entire mountain up another mountain. Mm-hmm. I knew how I would be doing it. I knew from the beginning that I would never take corporate money. I would never take foreign interest money from any nation. And I knew the method, the importance, and I knew that the way that I would run my campaign was going to make it 10 times more difficult. It did feel a bit like trying to land a pin in a cup from 3 miles away. But what is happening in the nation, what's happening across our communities, the injustices, the changes they're making that are quite literally going to unhome, kill, and destroy social services, and then therefore the people in our communities, makes it worth it. Based on what's happening in the nation, the struggle is worth it. Now is the time to do it because the government is acting in a way that is going to kill, unhome, and hurt people, real human beings in our community. And so me struggling to give voice to it, me struggling to fight for the community members like myself, me running a campaign that little me would have loved. I'm trying to advocate and be the person that I wish I had when I was a kid. And because of that, every bit of struggle is worth it. Every bit of being closed out of different groups, every bit of hate online, those hate messages you send, I get them. Mm-hmm. Every bit of that, every message is absolutely worth it because that's what we need. Our democracy is quite literally at risk right now.
And you didn't have a guarantee that a blue wave was coming because you hadn't, by the time you had filed, you hadn't seen all of these like 13-point swings that were happening across the country. You entered in a time when there was a lot of unknown, and it kind of felt like the red wave was just a chokehold that was taking over. And like, how do we pry this power out of the hands of people who are in the pockets of these special interest groups on the Democrat and Republican side? But now there's this huge progressive wave, especially people that are like, I'm not taking APAC money. I'm not taking corporate PAC money. I'm doing it grassroots. We're seeing them run up against people from their own political party with millions of dollars, and they're winning.
Yes. At the time that I launched my campaign, when I told people I'm running a grassroots campaign, I'm not taking this money, I'm going to do it while doing community aid, mutual aid, they looked at me like I was smoking crack in front of them. Because there was no blue wave. It was looking at the eyes and looking into the maw of just some giant creature, the Republican MAGA party at the time. And knowing, because you're right, at that time, Cory Mills seemed like he would have endless resources. But honestly, that view and that feeling made me push harder. It made me realize, even if I fail, we're going to fail doing the right thing. And we're going to fail after a year and a half of campaigning, knowing we made a difference across our community.
Yeah.
And 100%. And then seeing this change and seeing this swing happen real time, the hope that I felt then and the hope that I feel now is what powers it.
Yeah.
Because right now, more than ever, we have to have hope. We really do. And these swings we're seeing everywhere show that this hope is not only just a concept. It is the path forward. It is the saving grace, the reckoning, and it's happening.
Well, it's really interesting because I have a similar story. Instead of running for office, I think of it as I want to be the campaign manager and have my own firm specifically to help progressives. And people look at me like I'm high on drugs all the time. That's basically how, especially people from within my own Democratic Party, look at me. It's actually funny because I have a lot of support from Republicans, because Republicans understand, because they've been exposed to it here in Florida like no other, with DeSantis being our governor, that if you don't play the way that the Republicans want you to play and kiss the ring, they cut you out and you can't win as a progressive Republican because they will shut you out. So I remember when you were running, a lot of the people from within the establishment of the party immediately were like, she's not going to win. She's not going to raise the money. And they just wrote you off immediately.
Yes.
And you started incorporating this mutual aid. You started having all of these people following you around like a posse everywhere you went. And then, of course, you started actually bringing in grassroots resources from like over 20,000 donors across the country. And it's still coming in. Like, resources are still coming in. People are now starting to reach out with you with big names. And even if, which I'm not going to put it into the universe, but even if you don't get over the finish line, which you will, I think that the roots that you're pushing down here in this district are important roots to build off of in the future, because Volusia County is so neglected. Seminole County, it has so much potential to flip, but it's so underinvested. And Orange County, it feels like, being in politics for as long as I have, that it's just now getting its footing, but without the help of the party infrastructure. It's really doing it grassroots, but it still has a long way to go. And when I see candidates who are committed to building something bigger than just themselves, restoring trust by providing resources and support for vulnerable communities, it helps people perk up an interest to want to go to the voting booths again. Because when you knock on doors, sometimes you have people that are really excited, which we appreciate, but you get a lot of people that are like, I'm done with politics. I'm never paying attention to politics again. I voted, I did my time voting, and I got burned each time. I'm out. And when you are faced with that apathy, you get what happens with 2024. We can fight all day long about Kamala Harris should have done this. She should have been more left. She should have been more moderate. She should have not talked about trans issues. She should have not. Put all that aside. The largest voting group were non-voters. And if we don't find a way to put a real agenda on paper and get those people excited to leave their house and go to the polls, we will lose forever. We will lose our democracy. We will be complicit in what Trump is doing to enrich himself and his friends while gutting those programs that helped you literally survive.
The reason that I framed my campaign like this before, built on community aid and putting down those roots, before I launched with a food drive because of exactly that. I absolutely refused, because I felt it. I felt that Democratic fatigue. I felt that election fatigue of, you're just throwing your vote into the wind and we'll see what happens. Mm-hmm. And I refused to contribute, and I refused to run a campaign that was just better than the other option. I wanted to give people something to vote for. We cannot just choose to vote against something else anymore, to vote for the least worst option. We need to prove and run campaigns that give people something to vote for. Principle, agenda, solutions. It's why when I launched my campaign, I told people I wouldn't ask for their money and I wouldn't ask for their support until we proved that it was possible, until we proved what we could do for the community through that mutual aid, until I showed actual solutions to alleviate the issues that we are facing. Yeah. And that's the entire reason why I've structured my campaign the way that I do, why I'm proud to have Republicans who volunteer with the campaign, because it's not just better than Cory Mills. It's paving a path forward for a Florida that we can afford, a Florida that takes care of our children, a Florida where we can all live and thrive in. And that's what's needed. And even if it doesn't get past the finish line, no matter what, we've built the structure, we've built the tracks to continue the movement, to bolster what will bring the change. And those networks will already be there. The communications will already be there. The relationships will already be there. And all of the volunteers who volunteered with this campaign will be trained to have those skill sets to bring it forward and push forward the movement even more. For 2028. And we need those people to stay active past whatever is to come with this district in this year. So, but you're giving them something exciting to even just start. You have a lot of first-time canvassers coming out to your events, which is really cool. But I want to go back and talk about those policies that you want to sell to the community, not just sell it because it sounds good, but like what will bring actual relief. You brought up like the VA. I mean, right down the street from here, we have a nonprofit called State of Hope, where they provide housing in a hotel for veterans that are currently unhoused. Dr. Diaz told me that there are veterans going in the dumpster and eating from the dumpster because they have no other option. In America, in Orlando, in my community down the street from here today, we have over 38,000 homeless veterans. And all politicians we have in office, all candidates, will tell you nothing is too good for our veterans, yet we have 40,000 of them who are left wanting. We are spending money that should be funding our veteran healthcare, our veteran well-being, on everything else, on a new ballroom, on foreign wars, on funding real estate properties, and asking charities to take care of our veterans. It's corrupt negligence. I love State of Hope. If anyone's in Central Florida, support State of Hope. That's where we give a lot of the clothes that we get for clothing drives. The juxtaposition to Trump lives 3 hours away from here in this grand, beautiful place, and we have homeless veterans eating out of the trash can 3 hours away. Probably even where he lives too.
Where do you see your policies? I'd love to see your top 3 and then throw in a couple goodies that maybe people don't know about you that you're excited to champion.
Absolutely. You can read all of them at kinterforcongress.com, FOR, kinterforcongress.com, under the values page. And when you expand it, it'll go into solutions, actual individual policies that we can implement. I would say the big ones are veteran healthcare, affordability, and investing in our public education, which includes, in my opinion, in my definition of it, includes universal pre-K and expanded full-day options. We need to treat pre-K and universal childcare as an investment in our job economy, which it is, an investment in our public education system. And then I also include trade programs in there, having joined the Navy, which is a trade school, essentially. I was a mechanic. especially in Volusia, where the job economy is heavily held up by our trade programs and food industry. We need to be implementing trade programs through public education where people can actually get certifications so that Floridians can afford to graduate high school and then continue to live and work where they grew up.
Mm-hmm. And when you talk about healthcare, I think everyone is going to ask about your approach on healthcare because we have a crisis here in Florida where we have a lot of seniors. There's over 53% of our senior population here is definitely having to choose between groceries and their medication right now. I'm sure in your district with the rising cost of property insurance as well, it's just seniors who come here probably for the weather. They're having a harder and harder time surviving, which is leading to over 40% of our homeless population is currently seniors or children in Florida. And so maybe talk a little bit about your healthcare platform.
I include the healthcare and the cost of living crisis, healthcare, housing, and affordability. And I believe the path forward is single payer healthcare options. We invest more than dozens of other nations. We are one of the top investors. We are the top investor in a healthcare system, yet we don't get any of the benefits as the other 8 top nations who invest in it, who have universal or single payer healthcare options. And if we cannot get single payer healthcare to pass in Congress, we need to introduce and implement legislation that moves us towards that or moves us towards eliminating the goal. Mm-hmm. I would vote yes on universal healthcare until the rest of Congress is ready to invest in it. We need to be implementing negotiating insurance costs, negotiating or lowering the cost or age entrance of Medicaid, raising the income of Medicare, allowing insurance to negotiate prescription drug costs to the cost of the generic brand, meaning streamlining and implementing our health insurance payouts as well. If we can't just have universal healthcare, there are 25 other things we can do in order to move the needle in that direction. Mm-hmm. I feel like right now, I don't know how you feel about it. Our Congress right now, if they can't accomplish the entirety of something, they make no moves to accomplish any of it. Yeah. They just stay at that standstill, and we need to move past that and start doing incremental changes to accomplish the end goal.
Well, it's so hard if you have, insurance companies flooding our elections with money, and big pharma. I mean, if that's part of the reason why even progressive people that make it through and represent their communities can't get some more ambitious policies across the finish line. We're sitting here. I mean, all due respect to the Democrats that fought on the front lines of, the government shutdown over the Affordable Care Act subsidies. But man, we're literally fighting over giving people subsidies for like an already broken, already expensive system. And we're fighting over these tiny little subsidies, which are something. But right now we are past the point of crisis. We need to invent a new word for what people are experiencing. Out in the Midwest, they have these free clinics where folks can come only, I think, on Saturdays and Sundays and get, seen by a physician that is actually giving free time. And that line is literally like 3 days long. Like people come and sleep in their car waiting outside to get access to a doctor.
Am I allowed to plug a program?
Of course.
The Muslim community in Central Florida has a very similar program. They provide free dental care to anybody without insurance. Mm-hmm. And that's something that a lot of people in Central Florida don't know, but it exists here as well, that infrastructure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they have like a mobile clinic that goes to a lot of the homeless resource centers like Samaritan Resource Center, and they stop and provide care. And we're very lucky to have some of the programs that we have, but Lord, it is not enough.
They should not be necessary.
Right. I mean, I'm a Bernie babe, and he's always talking about administrative overhead, and just the cost of billing is so substantial that if we could just refocus those resources into that single payer option, we could explore like expanding these safety nets for people. I mean, even expanding, we have examples of this within the VA healthcare system. They already provide subsidized healthcare for veterans, but they don't expand it to their families, or or their extended families. I mean, if we could even just start there and expanding some of the programs that are already on the books, 15% of our population is already veterans, like we could really help people today. But what does Cory Mills think about that?
We can check his X. That's the only time he expresses views to constituents. He doesn't come here. So let's pull up his Twitter. Some veterans programs, especially for people with disability ratings, do include their family. So that's great. But they do need to expand it heavily, heavily, heavily. They need a fully funded and properly managed VA system. We need a healthcare options across the board for people who aren't veterans. Being a veteran isn't the only qualifier on are you a human deserving of not going bankrupt and having to put your family out because you get sick. We don't take good enough care of our veterans. We don't take good enough care of any citizens, period. In order to talk about discussing improvement on any, just bottom line up front, any political improvements, we have to focus and direct getting money out of politics. Because what you just said, insurance payouts, to lobbyists, to congressional reps getting out of office and becoming lobbyists immediately to continue the enrichment career path they've chosen. Until we get money out of politics, until we stop American citizens who are voting's voices being completely drowned out in a sea of money, we're never going to have improvement. None of the things that we want, no meaningful change, no meaningful path forward for working class communities will happen as long as money controls the narrative. You can't have a conversation when the narrative is controlled by lobbyists.
100%. Any special, well, first of all, I love the universal pre-K. I mean, your website has very detailed, descriptions of some of the policies that you stand for. Universal pre-K will strengthen our economy. We already have examples of them doing that when we were going to World War II and women had to get into the workforce. The only way they could entice women to leave their families, their children, was to get a universal childcare system in place. And then they did away with it as soon as the war was over. And so I feel like we have proof that those programs work. And we have proof that it strengthens the economy. But
we also have proof that when parents are at work, they can't watch their kids.
Really?
So in order to have people who are gainfully employed and in a way where they can work full time, like a lot of these programs that assist people want you to do, they physically can't be at work if they have to watch their 3-year-old or they have to watch their 4-year-old. And then they get removed from these social programs that keep them afloat because they can't meet these certain very strict requirements because they are literally taking care of a human being.
Well, just make their grandparents homeless.
Yeah, make your grandparents homeless. They don't need a house or anything. Just watch them.
Yeah, it's like, it just doesn't make sense. But then they're always like, we need young Americans to have more babies. And like, it doesn't make any sense.
The government, Congress, wants young Americans for everything as long as it benefits them. They want young Americans to vote, but only if it's for what they want. They want the young American population to run for office, but not if they don't have 40 years of experience, because that experience, the same experience that got us into this mess, is what they're missing. So they aren't going to want the things that they want. They want young Americans to be in the workforce, but not paying for their child care, making sure their child is being taken care of.
Yeah. Or have adequate, working conditions, wages, healthcare, so that they can be healthy at work.
They want you to buy a home too.
Yeah.
But for outrageous interest rates, and they want your home to flood also.
It's absolutely insane. So tell us a little bit about how people can get involved with your campaign.
If you want to get involved in the campaign, kinterforcongress.com, volunteer page. You can also find it on any social media, Marialana Kinter for Congress. Get involved. We have an ever-growing volunteer base, and if you have a skill, even if you don't think you have a skill that translates, if you have something you like in your real life, you like in your personal life, we can find a place for you on the team where you're contributing to a movement that you want. You're contributing to a future that you want. Whether it's texting, phone call, making designs, emails, any of it. We have an option, and we want you on the team to volunteer with love so you don't burn out. This is the time we have to come together.
It has to be exciting. It has to be something that you're eager to be a part of, and not something that you're just squeezing their canvassing capacity out of them.
That seems very popular in politics right now.
Yeah. So I always ask everybody at the end of each interview, what is something that you do to like replenish yourself emotionally so you can take on the next day?
I'm sure you get this answer a lot, but I spend time with my family, but not just in a big burst. I'm very lucky. When I said earlier, very briefly, that we all live in the same house, I meant me, my husband, my brother, his fiance, their son, my sister, and her 2 sons, who are all below the age of 8. We all live together. We're doing the village mindset. We're a very close family. And so every day I get to spend time with my family. And so I don't feel like a giant need to recharge in one go, because every single day, even when I'm tired, even when I don't necessarily want it, they recharge my battery. I love being an aunt. I love harassing my siblings. And we also have 3 dogs in the house. So I would say just enjoying those moments and enjoying what is a very unique living situation. I love it. I really love it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. What do you guys do?
It's very chaotic having 3 kids and 1 billion adults. We spend a lot of time outside in the yard. We do water parks. We have skateboarding ramps. I roller skate. My sister roller skates. All the nephews are either scootering or skateboarding. They're all learning how. So we drag all those into the street. We're constantly outside. We go to the skate parks a lot, especially Castleberry Wheels. Highly recommend them. They're fantastic for a third space. That's the big hyper focus in my house right now, is skateboarding and roller skating.
Cool. Well, I think being around kids, reminds you of why we need to fight to save our democracy and save these safety nets for our children. I'm sure that you have so many other things that you want to talk about and so many other policies, but I think you should really plug now just more ways to get involved. I know you already made your volunteer ask, but don't forget that being grassroots, you need resources too.
We have an average donation of $21. We've received donations as low as $1. And guess what? They helped us meet the mission. They helped us get resources. So even if you can send $1, send it our way. Average donation, $21. They have money. We have people. Join the fight. Seriously.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited to get to be a part of this story and this journey. So many more policies that we'll talk about, and we'll probably have you on. We're going to be doing some live events and Twitch streaming and things like that. So I'm really excited to showcase you all across Florida. And just thank you so much for fighting, because it takes a lot of sacrifice, and it's a really scary time to get into politics, and you're choosing to run into the fire and do everything you can to put it out. So I appreciate that.
Put out a fire, you got to get burned sometimes.
Yeah. Well,
cheesy.
Thank you. And thank you all for watching. We'll see you at the next one. Bye. Thank you so much for watching. If you like what you heard today, please comment, subscribe, and share. And visit organizingtovictory.com so that you can learn more about all the ways that we're going to be organizing this year. It is the most important election year of our lives. I know you hear that all the time, but we here at Organizing to Victory hope to not just talk about the issues, but to organize around the issues. So please share, subscribe, and follow us. And we'll see you on the next one. Thank you.